I now declare the December Council meeting open at 6:30 p.m. and welcome all those in attendance. I now invite Councillor Wheatland to read the acknowledgement to country.
This one for the second.
Check, 1, 2. Okay, it's working. The City of Melville acknowledges the Bibbulmun people as the traditional owners of the land on which the city stands today and pays its respect to the Whadjuk people and elders both past, present and emerging.
Thank you, Councillor Wheatland. Now I draw your attention to the disclaimer on the screen. The affirmation of civic duty and responsibility on the screen. The advice of audio-visual live streaming and recording on the screen. Now, to assist me with the smooth running of our meeting, if you plan on asking a question during public question time and you haven't already submitted the question to us in writing, it would be appreciated if you could complete a question time form on the table to your left and hand it to an officer prior to the commencement of public question time. Okay, moving on to item 2, attendance and apologies. We have Councillor Spanbrook attending electronically tonight with my permission. Can you please confirm your attendance?
In attendance, thanks, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Spanbrook. Additionally, there are no councillors providing an apology for this evening. And finally, we have Councillor Panayiotou on leave of absence. Item 3, declarations by members. Declarations by members who have not read and given due consideration to all matters contained in the business papers presented before the meeting. Nil. Declarations by members who have received and not read the elected members' bulletin. Nil. Item 4, announcements by the presiding member. Approved deputations. One deputation has been approved for tonight's meeting from Miss E. Cole of Melville in relation to item E2581, Policy Review CP029, Trees on City Managed Land Policy. I will call you forward prior to the discussion on the item to make your deputation to Council. Approved written submissions. Additionally, 2 written submissions have been approved from Mr M Cleary of Bicton in relation to item UP 2594, Review of Local Planning Policy 3.1 Residential Development, and Mr M Fitzgibbon of Melville in relation to item UP 2594, Review of Local Planning Policy 3.1 Residential Development. This information has been circulated ahead of the meeting to elected members and a copy will be included in the minutes of this meeting. Item 5, disclosure of interest. Can the Head of Governance please advise if there are any disclosures of interest for this evening? Ms Newman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you, no disclosures have been received for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further disclosures from elected members? If there's nil, we're moving on to item 6, public question time. I now open public question time at 6:34 p.m. Questions received in writing prior to the meeting A number of questions have been received with notice this evening, and we have, if we have the questioner to asker here in the meeting or have a representative to ask the question, could you please make your way to the microphone to ask your question when called? If there's no one in the audience to ask the question and the question is not taken on notice, the question and response will be provided in the minutes, which will be available to the public on Friday, 12th of December. The list of questions is from the City of Melville Residents and Ratepayers Association, Dr J Stevens of Bicton, Mr M McCleary of Burragoon, Mr G War of Bull Creek, Miss E Cole of Melville, Mr D Morley of Willagee and Miss L Sesconete of Bicton. Okay, now I'll call forward, first of all, the City of Melville Residents and Ratepayers Association. Is there a representative here to ask a question? If there is no representative, we'll move on to Mr J Stevens of Bicton. Please come forward if you have for your question. We don't see him, so Mr M McCleary of Burragoon, please come forward. No, Mr G War of Bull Creek, he's not present. Thank you. Miss E Cole of Melville.
Like a class roll, isn't it? Thank you, Madam Mayor, councillors and staff. I've got questions relating to the CP 029, trees on city managed land. Under the proposed policy, or the new proposed policy, the maximum fine for damaging a street tree increases from $5,000 to $10. However, this still undervalues the true worth of a mature tree. A 2010 Perth study found that street trees add around 10% to the value of a property. And by comparison, you might be interested to know in Sydney, penalties for unlawful tree removal can reach $100,000 for individuals and $1 million for corporations, and may include a criminal conviction and jail time. Given this, will the city consider adopting a penalty framework that more accurately reflects the real economic value of a mature street tree? Further, is there any regulatory barrier that would prevent the city from setting fines at 10% of the median property value of the suburb in which the offence occurs, so that the penalties function as a genuine deterrent rather than a manageable cost? Thank you.
Mr Yildiz, could you please respond?
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for your question, Mrs Cole. The offence for damaging a tree is under the City of Melville's Activities and Thoroughfares, Public Places and Trading Local Law 2014, which is a local law adopted under the authority and powers of the Local Government Act 1995. Unfortunately, Section 3.10 of the Local Government Act stipulates that the maximum penalty for a conviction of an offence under a local law is a penalty not exceeding a fine of $10,000. So that restricts the city's ability to be able to exceed that.
Thank you, Mr Yildiz, Director of Legal, Governance and Risk. Now you asked the second question.
Yes, I did.
Thank you.
So this is also relating to verge trees and artificial turf compliance. Will the council plant a verge tree where there is artificial grass? I'm not sure. There's two parts.
Yes, Mr Coton, Director Environment and Infrastructure.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, if artificial grass is present in a verge and the property owner directly adjoining the verge requests a tree, then the city will supply and plant a tree.
Okay, thank you. So my next part was, if no, what remedy would the council seek from the owner to allow for a verge tree where they install artificial grass over the maximum 50% as outlined in the verge tree policy? Is that not relevant?
Well, the answer is yes, we would plant a tree where there's artificial grass if the owner requested it. So yes, that part's probably not relevant.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr D Morley of Willagee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, councillors. Good evening, staff, and hello to everyone watching the live stream at home. Lovely to be with you again. These questions that I'm asking this evening are a response to the Melville City Council's officer's advice provided to councillors recently by their Director of Planning. The questions relate to the alternate motion to item UP 25/93, trees on private land, to be moved tonight in support of the adoption of the Walga tree policy model by Melville City Council. And my first question is this, there are three parts. Given Melville's 2021 climate emergency declaration, why is officer advice prioritising engagement, financial and legislative concerns over resident health? And how will council avoid repeating the City of Kalamundur's mistake where a watered-down Walga tree policy model harmed community trust and led to petitions for stronger protections?
Ms Bowman, CEO.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Mr Morley. Because we have received these questions without notice, in accordance with our meeting procedure local law, we'll need to take them on notice and provide a response in the agenda for the ordinary meeting of Council in February 2026. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. Does that apply to the second and third questions I'm about to read out?
Ms Bowman.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam. Yes, Mr Morley, it will, because we've received them just recently. We are unable to provide a response tonight, but we'll provide all the responses in the agenda for the February Council meeting next year. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. Through you, Madam Mayor.
Can I just
on
ask a
matter of
question? Sorry.
procedure, yeah.
Can I please ask a question in relation to governance?
Governance. Yes, Councillor Wheatland.
Yeah, just the questions are directly relating to the items that are on the agenda tonight. And so for these questions to be answered in February, it's kind of a bit of a, I think it would be reasonable
what's
to
your
expect
question?
an answer to, could we have an answer tonight, please?
Well, I
Madam
think
Mayor, a point of order, please, a point of order.
yes,
So
thank you.
You've already actually answered the question, and the fact that these are taken on notice, have not been given notice, so...
thank you. I thank you very much, Councillor Spanbrook. Ms Bowman has already given the response. These are questions have been taken on notice, and they'll be responded to in February. Okay. Yes, it will be February. Yes, thank you, Mr Drayton.
Thank you,
Mr.
Madam
Morley,
Mayor.
I should say.
Yeah, that's quite all right. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just as a procedural issue, the two questions additional that I had listed on tonight that I have yet to read out would be, I believe, of interest, given that the alternative motion to be discussed with councillors this evening could be of interest and an issue to councillors, if I read them out.
Mr Morley, did you say you have two more questions?
Yes, they were listed when I sent them through, yeah. Even if I don't get a response.
Would you like to read out the questions?
I would if I could,
Yes.
yes.
Please
Thank you
read
very
the
much.
questions out.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Thank you, councillors and CEO. The second question I had was, how do engagement risks like reduced workshop flexibility outweigh the public health risks of delaying a retention first policy, especially when Kalamunda's weaker approach eroded trust and triggered backlash? And this is an issue that's only just given rise fairly recently. That was question number 2. And the final question I had listed was, what cost-benefit analysis compares the upfront costs of arborist assessments with long-term health and climate benefits, given Kalamunda's underinvestment has already led to community frustration and calls for reversal? I look forward to receiving those answers in February.
Thank you, Mr Morley. Ms Sesconetto of Bicton, please apologise if I didn't quite get that name right. Are you in the audience? Okay, thank you. Are there any further questions from the public? If there's no further questions, I will close the public question time at 6:44 p.m. Thank you. Item 7, awards and presentations. There are no awards or presentations for this evening. Item 8, applications for new leave of absence. The following councillors have submitted requests for leave of absence. That's Councillor York for 1 week in December and Councillor Barber for 3 days in December. Are there any further requests for leaves of absence? If there are no further requests, can I please have a mover and seconder? Thank you, Councillor Woodall. Seconded, Councillor Ross. Is there anyone against? If no one's against, I declare it carried. Item 9, confirmation of minutes, ordinary meeting of the council, 18 November. Can I have a mover and seconder for the officer's recommendation? Councillor Green, seconded Councillor Woodall. Is there anyone against? I declare it carried. Item 9.2, ordinary meeting of the Audit, Risk and Improvement Committee, 19th of November. Can I please have a mover and seconder? Thank you very much. Councillor York, seconded Councillor Robbins. Is there anyone against the adoption of the officer recommendation? If there's not, I declare it carried. 9.3, ordinary meeting of the Governance Committee, 24th of November. Can I have a mover and seconder for officer recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Barber. Sorry, move Councillor Barber. I need a seconder. Councillor Lim. Is there anyone against? I declare it carried. 9.4, ordinary meeting of the Audit, Risk and Improvement Committee, 26th of November. Can I have a mover and seconder for the officer recommendation? Councillor Robbins, seconded Councillor York. Is there anyone against? If no one's against, I declare it carried. Item 9.5, ordinary meeting of the Policy and Legislation Committee, 1 December. Can I have a mover and seconder for the officer recommendation? Councillor Wheatland, seconder Councillor Woodall. Anyone against? If there's no one against, I declare it carried. Item 9.6, notes of the agenda briefing forum, 2 December. Can I have a mover and seconder for the officer recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Woodall, seconded. Councillor Green. Anyone against? If no one's against, I declare it carried. Moving on to item 10, new business of an urgent nature. There is no new business of an urgent nature. Item 11, identification of matters for which meeting may be closed. Item C25-352, RFP outcomes for 10 Canning Highway, Attadale, has been identified as confidential and will be held to the end of the meeting so we can move to go behind closed doors. 12, petitions. There are no petitions for consideration this evening. Item 13, adoption of recommendations en bloc. We now move to en bloc items for this evening, and the following items have been recommended to be carried en bloc. C25-341, Strategic Integrated Audit Plan. C25-339, Internal Audit Charter. M25-62, Common Seal November. C25-346, Investment Statements for October. C25-347, Schedule of Accounts paid for October. E25-83, Response to Notice of Motion, Applecross Ferry Terminal. E25-84, Deferral, Additional FOGO Bins Report. Can I have a mover and seconder for the officer's recommendation? Councillor Ross, seconded. Councillor Wheatland. Anyone against? If no one's against, I declare it carried. Right, 14. Reports. We now move on to the items for this evening, and the first item I would like to bring forward this evening for the convenience of those providing a deputation is from the Policy and Legislative Committee held on 1 December. E25-81 Policy Review CP 029 Trees on City Managed Land Policy. Prior to tabling the officer recommendation, I'd like to invite Ms E. Cole to make a deputation. Can you please make your way to the microphone? You have 10 minutes to speak, with a further 5 minutes for elected members to ask questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, councillors and officers. I'm speaking on in relation to E2181, the policy review, CP 029, Trees on City Managed Land Policy. Perhaps the easiest way to understand why verge trees matter is to imagine two versions of the same street. In the first version, it's a really hot February afternoon. Heat radiates off the pavement so intensely it shimmers in the air. A parent pushes a pram along the footpath, but the wheels drag through the heat. The toddler inside, flushed and sweating, begins to cry. A neighbour walking their dog turns back because the bitumen is too hot. The older kids who used to play outside are on their devices. It's too hot, Mum. Even the birds are silent. There's nowhere to perch, no food, no shade. It feels like an empty street, noisy from air conditioners, even though people live all around it in their homes and apartments. In the second version of that same street, the temperature has dropped the moment you turn the corner. A line of verge trees, whether they're jacarandas, plane trees, gum trees, or cast soft, dappled shade that makes the street 8 to 10 degrees cooler. A parent pushes the pram easily now. The toddler points up at a pair of Carnaby black cockatoos cracking nuts in the branches. 2 children pump their legs on a rope swing. A teenager walks home from school without worrying about the heat. An older resident with a walking frame takes their daily stroll because with shade, walking is possible again. A couple sit on their apartment balcony with a glass of wine looking through the branches of a tree, watching their new fledgling neighbours. People slow down, people talk, the street breathes, and the birds return, not just to one tree, but because a connected corridor finally exists. As you know, probably by now, I'm Esther Colan from the Melville Tree Canopy Advocates. I'm here to strongly support the Council adopting a verge tree policy that greatly strengthens verge tree planting and retention, moving to a compulsory requirement from 2028, supported by education and collaboration with local governments already leading in this space. I do so because I'm listening to the City of Melville community who were dissatisfied with their loss of tree canopy or never had enough canopy planted in the first place. Verge trees are essential urban infrastructure. They cool streets, they reduce the urban heat island and effect. They improve air quality, stormwater management and biodiversity. They lower household energy costs. They support walkability, health and community wellbeing. As infill accelerates and mature private trees continue to be lost, public land is now the only reliable place to secure long-term canopy. Without a decisive verge planting program, Melville will not meet its council-endorsed 15% target canopy. A strengthened verge tree policy with compulsory verge trees starting from 2028 is reasonable, responsible and aligns with your duties under the Local Government Act, which are to promote environmental sustainability, mitigate climate risks, consider long-term impacts for future generations. Most concerns, parking, tree choice, solar access, storm fears and views are addressed through simple information. Residents overwhelmingly support verge trees once they understand they can still park on the verge, tree placement can avoid overshadowing solar panels, well-maintained trees present extremely low risk, and views can be maintained using thoughtful species selection and view framing design. An education campaign between now and 2028 will ensure high acceptance and lasting cultural change. A University of West Australia study found that each broadleaf tree added around $17,000 and $2,010 to the median property value in Perth suburbs. Shaded streets in Australia cities show 5 to 15% higher property values due to improved amenity and walkability. Cities like Sydney, far denser than Melville, retain higher canopy and stronger protections while continuing to outperform economically. Urban greening supports development, it does not hinder it. Tree canopy must not be a privilege of some suburbs. Every resident deserves shaded, safe, attractive streets, especially children, older residents and people walking to school, the bus stop or local shops. Verge trees are one of the most equitable, cost-effective tools we have. So the choice is before you, a hot street or a living one, a street that sends people indoors or one that brings people out, a street that repels wildlife or one that welcomes our Carnaby cockatoos home. Verge trees aren't decoration, they are comfort, safety, connection and wellbeing. They create neighbourhoods people still want to live in 10, 20 and 50 years' time. Please make the City of Melville cool by considering compulsory verge trees where it is possible to plant them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Cole. Are there any questions from elected members? Councillor Wheatland.
Thank you. And this is just, I just want to clarify something. When you're asked a question, at the start, you referred to fines between going from $5,000 to $10. Oh,
10,000, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions from elected members? If there are no further questions, thank you very much, Ms Cole. Now, I advise the Council of amendments from both Councillor Robbins and Woodall. However, prior consideration of those amendments, we will need to table the officer's recommendation first. So can I have a mover and seconder of the officer's recommendation? Councillor Green. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Wheatland. Oh, yeah, I think you need to. Councillor Barber. Thank you. Now, we have Councillor Robbins' amendment. Councillor Robbins, do you wish to proceed with it?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you. So can you, have you got a seconder? Councillor Woodall. Okay, Councillor Robbins, can you please begin your debate?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My amendment has two parts. The first part is just to reword the name of the policy, but just as it is written in the motion itself. So the name of the policy that's been developed is Trees on City Managed Land, and I'm just making sure that that is reflected in the wording of the motion. The second part is to include a new point 2, and that reads, request the Chief Executive Officer to prepare a report and, if required, associated recommendation regarding amendment of the aforementioned policy for presentation to Council by November 2026 and one or more elected member engagement sessions prior as necessary on the implementation of a new verge tree planting program to be rolled out from 2028 based on the principle that the default expectation is that all properties will have one or more verge trees where deemed practical. The purpose of this amendment is to start the conversation, or perhaps continue the conversation around whether the city should dictate whether residents need to have a verge tree or not. And it's something that we've had a lot of discussion about both at council meetings and at our informal workshops. To be honest, I can completely understand both arguments. On one hand, I can understand residents who maybe spend a lot of time and money maintaining their property, and the extension of that is the City of Melville Verge. And so if the city were to come along and tell them they must have a verge tree, they feel aggrieved by that. On the other hand, I completely understand the sentiment of Ms Cole, who's made the deputation this evening, and many, many other people who are concerned about our urban tree canopy. And as a city, we must be planting many trees to not only reach targets, which is very important, but also just for the well-being and enjoyment of our residents as well. So obviously there's planting that is undertaken in city parks and reserves, and I'm pleased to hear that that program is going really well, but we need to go beyond that, and I think we need to look at expecting that most of our residents, if almost all of our residents, will have a tree on their verge. I've made sure I included the wording "where deemed practical" here, because after conversations with staff, there may be a few, hopefully rare cases where it's not possible to put a tree, whether that be for access reasons or the size of the block. So acknowledging there may be some exceptions, but I would like it to be explored that we expect that everyone has a tree on their verge. I've stopped short of my original wording after conversations with officers, which was around having a fee if people say that they do not want a tree. Because as far as I see it, we either incentivise people to have a tree, or we penalise people if they don't have a tree. But I was told by officers that it's probably not possible for us to charge a fee for not providing a service, which I understand. Generally, all of our fees and charges, we're charging a fee to provide a service. And so the officer said that they think, yeah, it's not possible to charge a fee if we're not actually providing anything. So acknowledging that there would be difficulties and complexities with that, I've taken that part of it out. And this amendment asks the CEO to prepare a report, and hopefully we can workshop some ideas at our elected member engagement sessions prior to and perhaps after that report being prepared, and then for it to be presented to the November meeting of council with, if necessary, with some recommendations for amending the policy. So just for clarity, I'm not recommending that we amend the policy tonight. I know that a lot of work has gone into the current policy over a large amount of time, and a lot of councillors have put a lot of effort into finessing that policy at the policy committee meeting. So I don't want to sort of undo or try and change any of that at this point. I think that we do need to adopt the policy as it stands, but I think we need to continue the conversation around how we're going to increase our tree canopy more into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robbins. Councillor Woodall, do you wish to speak now or later?
Later, thank you.
Is there a speaker against? Question, Councillor Wheatland.
Yeah, in the officer report, there's no mention of the original motion as moved by Councillor Green. Is there a reason for that? Because that's where it all began.
Yeah, it went to the Policy and Advisory Committee. It will be in that document. Mm-hmm. A speaker against? A question, Councillor Barber.
Just a question of the mover of the motion. Just to clarify, what are the key differences between the officer's recommendation and your recommendation?
Thanks for the
Councillor
question.
Robbins.
So the first stop point is just around ensuring that the wording of the motion is reflected in the officer's recommendation. So that's really administrative. And then the second point, it doesn't propose any changes to the policy as it stands, but it's just asking that we continue the conversation around our verge tree planting program into the future. So I haven't proposed making any changes until the 2028 planting season, which would allow the current regime, which is allowing the planting in Leeming, Atterdale and parts of Bull Creek to finish and allowing people the opportunity to opt out, but then just asking that the CEO present a report for us to look at other options beyond 2028.
It appears we have a few questions. Councillor Spanbrook, I believe you have a question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First question I would like to ask is to Director Coaten, if I may. But secondly, I would like to speak against this motion. I think more information needs to be detailed.
Sorry, are you asking a question first of Mr. Coaten?
Yes, I will. And Mr. Coaten, would you mind actually providing some information or even a reply to Councillor Robbins' motion, please?
Through you,
Mr. Coaten?
yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, the issue of compulsory planting was certainly something that staff have considered at length as part of the process, but the overriding objective of the policy, what we're trying to achieve, is to increase urban canopy as much as possible, as quickly as possible. And our urban forest strategy has identified a lot of areas on street verges, parks, natural areas that are suitable for planting, and staff have got what I believe is a very good program rolling that out over a number of years. There are some areas where it's easier to plant trees than others, and they're the areas where we should be focusing. If we plant trees compulsorily, then we get objections from the residents. As outlined in the report, they take up a lot of staff time to deal with. Staff have to explain the rationale. It will often involve meetings with the supervisor, the manager will often get dragged into it, the director will sometimes need to be involved as well. And that staff time that's tied up with those arguments, in my opinion, is much better spent actually getting trees in the ground and planting the trees. So there's a lot of what I'd call low-hanging fruit in terms of trees that we can easily plant and get them in the ground quickly, get them absorbing the carbon dioxide, get them established, and we should be doing those easy ones. Also, as outlined in the report, historically, when we have, and not just at the City of Melville, but other local governments as well, when we do try and plant a tree against the wishes of the adjoining resident, there's a very high incidence of vandalism and damage, and I'm not for a moment suggesting that it would be the people associated with those houses, but there is a very strong correlation. And often, and I've seen situations where a local government will go back 3 or 4 times and plant a street tree on the same verge, and it just keeps getting run over or broken. And that's not good use of city resources. What we're trying to do is to get as many trees out there as quickly as we can. And so certainly down the track in a few years' time, certainly when we've got those easy wins in place, we've got those trees established, we've grown our urban canopy, then certainly have the debate on should we be forcing them on everybody. That debate should happen, but in the opinion of staff, it should be a debate that happens in a few years' time when we've got the easy wins done.
Ms Bowman, CEO.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just wanted to clarify, I think the question was also about Councillor Robbins' specific proposed amendment. So because the amendment is actually seeking a report, what Mr Coton has just described is the type of information that officers would be putting into the report, plus other requirements in the amendment if council was to support that. So specifically to do with the amendment, if council was to support that, then the CEO would be required to produce a report by November of next year, which would then outline anything from an officer perspective regarding potentially changing the policy in the future. So just to clarify, the amendment is about a report. Thank you.
Councillor Spanbrook, do you wish to speak against at this point?
I do, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
So we have heard from a speaker from the gallery as well, and also even though this is providing a report, that I would not be supporting this. And there is one area, or a number of areas I should say, that is never discussed. We all know the benefits of trees. However, I'm going to speak about the negatives for trees. And this is where the area that is always left off, that with trees, yes, there are many benefits, but there are also many other sides to it as well. So for an example, infrastructure damage, footpaths, driveways, tree roots can lift and crack concrete, creating trip hazards and costly repairs. Roads and curbs, roots undermine curbs and asphalt, leading to uneven surfaces. Underground services even, roots can infiltrate water pipes, sewer lines and stormwater drains, causing blockages. And of course, this is all at a cost. Then I'll go to private property, fences and walls, foundations. So there are another cost and the more issues. And not only that, there are also safety hazards with falling branches. The visibility issues of overgrown canopies can block sight lines for drivers, cyclists, and pedestrians, and increasing accident risk. And I won't even go into the whole maintenance and the cleanup of the leaf litter and root pruning costs. So in saying that, there is an upside, but there's also a downside to trees. So I don't support this. I think the actually, Madam Mayor, can I just check with you? If this policy is not supported, we then go to the officer, the tree policy. Is that correct?
Point of order.
It was a question.
Point of order.
What was the point of order?
The point of order is procedural. The Councillor Spanbrook was debating, speaking against the amendment, and then she went into a question.
And why is that a point of order?
Well, I'm asking you. It's
No,
procedural.
she's asking a question.
I'm asking you to rule on it, please.
I think it's a reasonable thing to ask a question. Do we have a response?
Wanting to know the process. I'm just wanting to know the process. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, we are talking about just the amendment. You are aware of that, Councillor
Correct.
Spanbrook.
Correct, and that's why
And
I
so
just
what will
wanted to
happen
say
if the
why
amendment...
I'm not supporting
Yeah,
it.
if the amendment is lost, we just go back to the officer's recommendation. That's what happens, because that's been moved and
Okay.
seconded and on the table.
Sure, okay. Well, I am speaking against the amendment. I don't think there's any need for the amendment. We have a policy that we can, that will be put on the table shortly. So, you know, I've already spoken about the negatives of verge trees. Yes, we know about the positives. And I just think that it's important that that information actually is shared. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spanbrook. A speaker for, Councillor Woodall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll speak for this amendment, and I thank Councillor Robbins for bringing it. I think this amendment, looking at it, is really asking for a report and to continue the discussions around compulsory verge trees, or how we increase verge tree coverage in the city. It's not committing us to it now. It's simply setting the stage, if you like, to get further information about how such a program could look from 2028, so it's still a number of years away. I think the idea of looking at whether there are incentives or disincentives to try and encourage verge tree planting is something that I would hope could be addressed in the report. Understandably, there are residents who don't want to have a verge tree, and there are other residents who really would like to have a verge tree. Once we've exhausted all the residents who would like to have one, I think we need to look at what mechanisms there might be to encourage people to have a verge tree if they're otherwise against it. And Councillor Robbins mentioned briefly the idea of a penalty or a fee for not having a verge tree, but on the flip side, it could be an incentive potentially for someone to agree to have a verge tree. And obviously that would come at a cost, but I think it's something that at the very least should be considered and looked at if it would mean more verge tree canopy. So I support the amendment. I think it's, as I say, it doesn't commit us to anything. It doesn't change the existing policy, but it does allow us to continue the discussion with a view to what we do from 2028 once the current opt-out program is completed.
Thank you, Councillor Woodall. Is there a speaker against? Councillor Green.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Whilst I understand and respect, I think where Councillor Robbins is coming from, and also comments from Director Coton, I just don't believe this amendment is necessary. I think it's encouraging that that we would like to see a continued conversation about, you know, perhaps urging people to have more verge trees. However, I think whilst the intentions here come from a good place, I think they take away from the intent of the policy that we have arrived at over several months now, and that is essentially that trees will be planted as deemed suitable by the city. And I think it's at a policy level, I think it makes a lot of sense to just leave it at that and give the autonomy to the city officers with you know, communication with elected members at the appropriate time. And as we've all heard about continuing the rollout program with verge trees over the remaining 2 or so suburbs that may well lead into 2028, but I just believe that in a lot of ways this amendment may just disturb the water so much in terms of what the intention of the policy that we have before us is intending to do. So I just think it would be better to leave it out. I think this approach that Councillor Robbins has put forward is a reasonable approach for the city officers to take when it comes to deciding where to plant the trees. But I think we can leave it at that. I don't think it needs to be included in the motion and ultimately a council resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Green. A speaker for? Okay, well, if there's no further, probably have a few more speakers against, but I think in order to balance the debate, I will go back to the mover of the motion and ask her to close the debate.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to take this opportunity to emphasise to elected members that I'm not proposing a change to the policy as it stands. I'm supportive of adopting that policy as endorsed by the policy committee. I'm just suggesting that we continue to look at ways to increase the city's tree canopy, and one way we can do that is by encouraging residents to have trees on their verges. And as a couple of ideas have been mentioned, there are different ways we can do that. Councillor Woodall mentioned that it might be an incentive for having a tree. So perhaps we write to residents and ask them, there might be a reduction in their rates, or it might be a $100 voucher or something like that for residents who agree to have a tree. Or my suggestion was a disincentive or a penalty if they refuse. So if they don't want to have a tree, they pay a fee or some other sort of disincentive. I just wanted to touch on the comments made by my fellow councillor about essentially undermining the current policy, and just wanted to bring to everyone's attention that I believe it is the intention of the officers to continue with the current operating model of residents being able to opt out. And so I know Councillor Green mentioned the words "where deemed suitable," and that is the wording, I believe, in the policy. But on an operational level, residents have up until now, and under this new policy will continue to be given the option of opting out of the verge tree. And as we've seen, the statistics previously presented by officers, I wish I had them handy, but I don't, but that the percentage of people opting out has increased year on year, and it's continuing to increase. And I think, don't quote me, but it might be up to about 60% now of residents opting out of the verge tree. So I think we need to find ways to encourage more residents to take up the offer of having a verge tree, which is why I'm proposing this amendment. It is just a report asking the Chief Executive Officer to prepare a report and continue the discussion at our informal engagement sessions. So I ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robbins. We'll now proceed to the vote. So voting green means you agree with the amendment as proposed by Councillor Robbins. If you vote red, you are not agreeing to it, and we are going back to the officer recommendation, which is on the table. Councillor Spanbrook, could you please give us your vote?
I'm against it. Thank you.
That is lost 4-7. We're now proceeding back to the officer's recommendation. However, we do have another amendment. We have another amendment from Councillor Woodall. Councillor Woodall, do you wish to proceed with your amendment?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Do you have a seconder? Councillor York, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this amendment is to request the CEO to commence a compulsory verge tree planting program in 2026, next year, and continuing in subsequent years for all commercial properties within the City of Melville deemed suitable by city officers in accordance with the policy. So the purpose of this amendment really is taking account of the fact that the original intent of the motion, I believe, passed or brought by Councillor Green, was to look at compulsory verge trees across the city. I believe that was the intent of that original motion. And it went to the Policy and Legislation Committee, and there's been a lot of discussion, and we've heard different sides of the debate, and also the views of city officers, I think, which we've all reflected on and taken into account. However, I do think that, notwithstanding that the amended policy that's been proposed, There is an opportunity to do something before 2028, which is the end of the opt-out process, and that's in relation to our commercial properties. The difference, I think, between a commercial property and a residential property is we're probably less likely to receive complaints from a commercial landowner versus a residential landowner. There's obviously a lot fewer commercial landowners than residential landowners. And I also think that our commercial areas tend to be probably some of the most inhospitable areas for pedestrians. And a great example, sort of Myrie, and that sort of business area, there's a lot of hard stand area, a lot of bitumen, and apart from some trees in the parking areas, there's not a huge amount of shade there. So this is really, I guess, to next year start to roll out to some extent a compulsory verge tree program, but only for commercial properties and only where they're suitable. So city officers will look at the verges and look at whether the verge is wide enough to accommodate a verge tree. Are there services underneath that will be impacted, and so on. So it won't necessarily be every single verge, but I think it's a good place to start. And it will also potentially give us some feedback and experience that we can perhaps take into account if we, in future, decide to go down the path of a compulsory program for residential. So I think there are benefits to it. If we commence the program and we do it for a couple of years and we find there's a huge amount of negative feedback or it's not working, there's no reason we have to continue it. But I think it's worth giving it a go. We've got to start somewhere, and this to me seems like low-hanging fruit, so to speak. So I would ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor York, do you wish to speak now or later? Speak now. Thank you.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Yeah, look, I just really want to agree with Councillor Woodall. I think it's a good way to run a test case. Basically, I think the stats are something like 80% of Melville's residential and 20%'s commercial industrial. So I think it's a good way to get a targeted test case program going of trialling compulsory verge tree planting. And yeah, I also agree that it's probably less likely to result in complaints, given most, as a general, most commercial properties are leased rather than owner operated. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor York. Is there a speaker against? Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think this, I don't support this motion because, or this amendment, because it, again, will be placing pressure on the administration to put in resources to go out and run this test case as it's been described. And I think in Councillor Woodall's reasons, he also mentioned that let's put it out there and see what happens. That's not the way that we should be making decisions as testing the guinea pigs out there. The owners of commercial land, if Councillor Woodall is correct in saying we'll get less complaints, well, there's no reason why we can't go out there now and plant trees on their verge and see if they accept it. I don't know if that's even been tried. I know the officers have mentioned that they've got something like 32,000 spaces for trees that are waiting to be planted. At the same time, instead of letting them go out and do that planting, we're continually finding reasons to give them other things to do. And so for those reasons, I don't think we should be making things compulsory without having discussed the matter with the relevant landowners. I don't think that we should be changing this policy on the run, as it were. This could have been brought up earlier. It wasn't. There's been a lot of debate on this matter. We've looked at it thoroughly, and this is a last-minute attempt to sneak something in without proper consideration and proper discussion. So for those reasons, I think we really need to step back, let the officers do their job. they say that there's a lot of space out there that they can plant. Let them plant that. Let those trees start growing, rather than continually putting barriers in their way that puts their focus on other things. So I think, in the interest of, greening the place, interest of getting green canopy going now, let's get on with this policy, and these sorts of motions can be brought later on if things aren't progressing the way they should be. But at the moment, I think they're premature, I think they're unreasonable, and I don't think they should be supported. So I ask that you don't support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Speaker 4, Councillor Wheatland.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I commend this amendment by Councillor Woodall. We were at the Melville Community Men's Shed anniversary on Sunday, and it was very apparent. We were standing there having a discussion, and we looked out to the verge, and I commented to another councillor, look, we could be having verge trees out there. And then I said, but I do understand that the Melville Community Men's Shed has an issue with parking. So there were still locations on the verge where those trees could be planted that was not going to impact. Myaree is devoid of canopy. There are no trees there. It's a concrete jungle. You look at, I parked at the Bunnings car park on Sunday so I could get across to the Community Men's Shed, not a tree in sight. I think we could actually go further within our other policy areas where we actually put clauses in commercial tenancies or in thoroughfares and activities and thoroughfares policy, parking policies, that we need to include a percentage. Sorry.
Yeah, look, I'm going to have to accept a point of order from Councillor Ross if that's to do with, yes, what was your point of order? But I think it's what I think it is. No. Quite right. Yes, quite right.
No,
we're
I'm not,
talking about
actually.
a policy.
Yeah, I'm just saying we need to go a little bit further and include a percentage in other policies for tree canopy. So I'll get back to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Look, I think that, whilst the substantive motion as amended, I think with the addition of this amendment, no, the substantive motion, it wasn't amended, sorry. With this amendment, it's going to increase tree canopy and we're going to get closer to that 15% target as set by council, which I don't think goes far enough. I think it needs to be at least 20. So I think this is a really good step forward. And in listening to the community's voices, which are very loud and very strong, we had an election recently and it was all about tree canopy. And here we are, we've got trees on the agenda and we're actually actively debating whether or not we need to put them in commercial areas where it's an easy add-on. We could have put them on verges, but anyway, I'll talk about that. Thank you. I know that's it. So please support this amendment. It's an easy way to get increased tree canopy and increased walkability across our commercial districts. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Wheatland. Is there a speaker for? Oh, sorry, that was a speaker for. Yes, against. I'm looking for against. Councillor Spanbrook, are you speaking for or against?
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Are you
speak against it.
You're speaking against it?
I will do.
Okay, thank you.
I do have a question for Director Coton, please, if I may, or one of the officers.
Yes, what is your question?
And my question is there anything stopping the City of Melville Department now by approaching businesses to see if they would like to have verge trees? Even maybe commercial properties haven't even been considered. It's all, the approach has always been to residents. So my question is that can they approach businesses? And also there are some businesses as well, just the information before I speak against this. Actually, sorry, I'll leave that. I'll speak against it.
Yeah, I think Councillor Spanbrook, that's what we're debating tonight. That's what we're debating tonight. I'm sure the officers can do all those things, but the debate tonight is whether...
I would like to know if the director can answer the question. Is there anything stopping the officers from actually approaching the commercial businesses from having trees now without having to have this motion?
Mr Coton.
Through you, Madam Mayor, staff have been approaching businesses as part of the program but on an opt-out situation. So and it is correct that the number of the commercial properties that do opt out is less than the residential properties, but we have been doing that.
All right, thank you. Councillor Spanbrook.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I would like to speak against this motion as well, as the Policy and Legislation Committee has actually have already met, and they have agreed to put forward the tree policy that we see as well. So therefore, as was already said by another councillor, that this is actually like adding to a policy on the run where it could have been done during the Policy and Legislation Committee. I think that it is completely unnecessary, and I think we need to focus on the foreshores, the parks and median strips and roundabouts. That's already in the policy. We need to let this policy play out. We have a very good administration now. They have an excellent director, and let's just give them an opportunity to do their job, and that is what the tree policy is about. Thank you, and I would like to encourage people to vote against this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spanbrook. Is there a speaker for? Councillor Barber.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Yes, I'd like to speak for. Councillor Woodall will know that I've been going on about this for quite a few years, so I applaud him for putting this amendment together. I will disagree when he says that we should hit the low-hanging fruit. I'm sure our businesses don't want to be called low-hanging fruit because we love our businesses, but hopefully they will see benefit in having trees on their verge. I agree with Councillor Wheatland that, and when I thought about verge trees in businesses, Myaree really does need some verge trees. I like the fact that Councillor Woodall wants to start in 2026. I think that's fantastic. And I do agree with Councillor Ross, though, that obviously I appreciate our small businesses in the City of Melville, and consultation will have to occur, but I'm sure that can happen. And I trust our city officers when they say that as practical as possible, let's try and start this verge tree planting so that we can increase our tree canopy. The best time to plant a tree is yesterday, so I think the sooner we start, the better.
Thank you, Councillor Barber. And is there anyone against? A speaker against? In the absence of further speakers against, I'll ask Councillor Woodall to wrap up the debate.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I'll just address some of the points that have been raised. The reason I've put this forward at this point is really because it's quite clear from the deputations and from general community feedback, I think that we've all been aware of through social media and the like, that there's a very strong desire for more trees, and particularly around street trees and trees that make our neighbourhoods more livable and more walkable. This really is a compromise between going to full compulsory trees on all verges and the current opt-out model which we have. There's no change to the actual policy being proposed. So the policy that we've settled on, the amended policy, is actually very broadly worded, and arguably it could actually, if the officers wanted to, empower them to go out and compulsorily plant verge trees, but they haven't used it in that way, and they don't intend to use it in that way. So this isn't actually amending the policy. The policy can stay exactly as it is. It's simply directing that we commence and commence in 2026. And it doesn't have to be a huge number of trees. It doesn't have to be going out to every commercial property and planting a street tree. That's not what I envision. It's really, we do it year by year, and we roll out the program and see how it goes. We've got to make a start somewhere, and it'll be very hard to simply go out and start putting trees on everyone's verges. There'll be a lot of negative feedback. This is a way I think we can do it that will allow us to test the program and see how the rollout goes. But it also, I think, is an opportunity to increase the tree canopy in areas which, as a number of councillors have mentioned, really probably need it the most, particularly Myaree. Just to address Councillor Barber's point, I know Councillor Barber spoke for the amendment, but low-hanging fruit, you could say low-hanging fruit is the ripest, so I think it was meant to be a compliment, but I'm happy to take that on board. But I just want to really touch on one final point, which is the verges we're talking about, we talked a lot about objections and property owners and all that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, these are city verges. They're not owned by private residents, and so I think we really need to understand that yes, we can plant trees in parks and foreshore areas, but we can also plant them in verges because they're city-owned verges. They're for the benefit of the whole community. The verge is not just for the benefit of the person who lives in the house next door. And I think that's an important point, and one which we really need to probably do further work on to really sell the benefits of the verges as a community asset rather than an individual asset of that one property. So I think I'll leave it at that, and I don't disagree that we also need to continue planting in parks and foreshore areas, but this really doesn't take away from that. It simply provides another avenue for officers to plant more trees in our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Woodall. Okay, we're going to the vote now. Green means you support the amendment and it will be added to the officer's recommendation. Red is you do not support it and it will not be added to the officer's recommendation. Councillor Spanbrook, are you for or against? Please tell us your vote.
I'm against it.
Thank you. This amendment is carried 9-2, so it is now forming part of the officer recommendation. Okay, we now are back to the substantive motion as amended. Is there anybody opposed? If there is nobody opposed, I declare it carried. We're now moving on to the next item. From the Policy and Legislation Committee, I wish to bring forward item number UP 2594, Review of Local Planning Policy 3.1 Residential Development. Prior to considering this item, I advise the Council that 2 written submissions have been received by Mr M McCleary and Mr M Fitzgibbon and was circulated by the governance team earlier today. A copy will also be available in the minutes of the meeting. Additionally, I advise Councillor Ross had submitted an amendment to this item and officers have provided an advice note, a copy which you have in front of you. Noting that the advice note has been received late today with their recommendation for a procedural motion to refer the draft Local Planning Policy 3.1 Residential Development to the Policy and Legislative Committee following presentation at the elected member engagement session in early 2026. A copy of this procedural motion is on the screen. Is there any elected member who wishes to move the motion to defer? I think we need to have a motion on the table. That is the officer's recommendation, first of all. So can I please have a mover and seconder for the officer's recommendation?
Sorry, is that the recommendation to defer,
Well,
Madam
the
Mayor?
officers, no, it's a recommendation to accept the officer's recommendation. Okay, the officer's recommendation, Councillor Green. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Wheatland, we have a deferral on the table. Who is moving that deferral? Councillor Ross. Who is seconding that deferral? Councillor Barber. Okay, we'll go to the deferral. So we have a procedural motion on the table. Did you wish to speak to it, Councillor Ross, or are you happy to proceed to a vote?
I'm happy just to proceed to the vote.
All right, thank you. You have received the advice note. Is there anyone against the procedural motion of deferral? Okay, if there is no one against, I declare it carried. All right, moving on to the next item from the Policy and Legislation Committee,
Excuse me,
which
Madam
is...
Mayor?
Pardon? Yes, Councillor Spanbrook, is that? Oh, sorry, Councillor Wheatland. I'm sorry, not sure where the voice is coming from.
I'm just mindful that we have residents in the gallery waiting to hear about the trees on private land policy. I was wondering if we could bring that forward.
Who's affected by this particular policy that's been mentioned? A number of you in the gallery. Okay, thank you. Okay, we will move to that item. Did I miss it? Oh, yeah. Okay, yes, it is UP 2593, I believe on page 28, if you have the same numbers as me. Thank you very much for bringing that to our attention, Councillor Wheatland. So this is trees on private land. Now, I advise that Councillor Wheatland has submitted an alternative motion with notice, which will be considered first. I also remind the Council of the officer advice note distributed on Friday, the 5th of December, and be aware that if this item fails, we have the officer's recommendation. So, Councillor Wheatland, do you wish to proceed with your motion?
Yes, please, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Green, thank you. So, Councillor Wheatland, please proceed with your debate.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, thank you. I moved this alternate motion. My reasons for moving this alternate motion was based purely and solely on community feedback and the community voices that are being very strong about the wish to have a WALGA, to adopt the MALGA. Oh, my words are really bad tonight, apologies. To adopt the WALGA model tree retention policy. And reasons for that is many WA councils, not many, 7 have adopted it already, with another council considering it tonight, and another couple of councils also considering it. Any delays mean more mature trees, significant trees, can be and are be and will be lost during redevelopment. I saw a couple today in Willagee that had been cut off at the base with the diameter of, I reckon, about 4 metres. The WALGA policy is very robust, and I want to talk about that right now. And what it does, it creates some clarity and consistency, not only for residents, but for developers and the city and for officers. And this matters because at the moment we have no consistent framework for assessing tree removal on private land. The WALGA model clearly defines what a significant tree is. It clarifies when approval is required, and it sets out transparent and predictable decision pathways. It also mirrors the legal requirements emerging from the Zorzi SAT ruling. This will benefit ratepayers because residents will finally know what applies to their property, why certain trees are protected, what the process is if removal is necessary, and that decisions are made using the same rules for everyone. The city benefits through reduced disputes, fewer complaints about inconsistency, improved trust in decision-making, and a clear compliance framework rather than case-by-case judgment. It protects the mature canopy that delivers the greatest public benefit. I think tonight's the first time I've ever heard anyone publicly talk about why, or the things that trees do badly, which is, excuse my language, but I have heard people complain about trees in the community. But this is setting up a framework that will allow people and residents to develop their properties and to know clearly what they can and can't do. It's going to help the city achieve its canopy targets. With nearly 45% of Melville's canopy currently sits on private land at the moment, and we know that public land can't alone deliver canopy growth. The WALGA-based policy ensures mature canopy is retained, replacement planting offsets unavoidable loss. Look, I want to talk about WALGA as well and what WALGA are and what they do. WALGA is a independent organisation that's responsible for 139 local governments. It provides policy advice. It provides advocacy. In the past, we have adopted model policies from
Point of order,
WALGA
Madam Mayor.
as a
Madam Mayor,
basis.
point of order. We're not
Councillor
talking
Spanbrook,
about
what is your
Wagga.
point of order?
A point of order. We're not discussing Wagga. We're actually discussing Councillor Wheatland's motion for trees on private land. So we don't really need to hear, the model or the business of Wagga.
Thank you, Councillor Spanbrook, but I think Councillor Wheatland is just giving us a little background on WALGA because it's referenced in item 2. She's using them as a reference to her argument, I believe. Is that the case?
Yes, it is the case. And WALGA has put in investment into developing this model policy. This is the reasons why I'm talking about it. They've consulted with agencies. They've consulted with local governments. They've consulted with arborists. They've spent the money and got legal advice. So they've actually carried out all of this work. So the reason I want to move this alternate motion is because I don't want to kick the can down the road and wait until next year to come back to an EMES and look at a trees on private land policy. WALGA have done the work. 7 local governments have adopted it already. And it's not about telling residents that they can't develop their properties and they can't cut down trees. It's very clear in the model policy. I hope you've all read the model policy and had a look at it because it's a very measured and balanced policy. Okay, let me keep going.
Councillor, can you wrap up your debate? You have 20 seconds.
Okay, I will wrap it up. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think, where is it? WALGA's tree-based retention policy is not just an environmental measure. It's a strategic governance tool that strengthens our planning system and ensures fairness and consistency, protects long-term livability, reduces future infrastructure costs and aligns with modern legal and planning requirements. It positions Melville as a proactive, future-focused council making responsible, evidence-based decisions for the benefits of ratepayers today and for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wheatland. I do have a question for officers. There were a number of councils that were quoted as having adopted the WALGA policy. I remember from an EMIS that these councils adopted different aspects of the WALGA policy. Would I be incorrect in understanding that? I seem to recall that came up at an EMIS. Would anybody be able to assist? Mr. Vrellis, planning. Thank you.
Through the chair, thank you for the question, Madam Mayor. Looking at the presentation to council, to the elected member engagement session, it doesn't actually differentiate which adopted the WALGA model and which adopted variations of the WALGA model. Notwithstanding, it is my understanding that many of the local governments that have adopted a policy for tree protection purposes have had their own nuanced provisions that represent their locale and their community and the intention of their council.
Thank you, Mr. Varellis. Councillor Green, do you wish to speak now or later?
I'll speak now, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Green.
I certainly support a lot of the comments that Councillor Wheatland has made, but I believe I'm coming at this from perhaps a different angle. I think I do agree that that WALGA has done a lot of the heavy lifting that we would be needing to do ourselves if we adopted what we've been calling option 3 from previous EMESs. I think there's a lot of stuff in here that is absolutely in line with what the City of Melville is doing already. There is flexibility built into the WALGA policy, and these are things that we can look at over the course of the process that we're about to embark on. I'd remind everyone that that what we're voting on tonight is not to adopt the WALGA policy. It's simply to prepare a draft policy based on the WALGA policy, but there's still an opportunity for us to discuss and adjust the aspects of the WALGA policy for our own policy. bring it to people's attention that in the Walga policy it says, in my mind, the primary objective of the Walga policy is that it ensures that retention and enhancement of the City of Melville's tree canopy cover is considered at all stages of development. The word there is considered, so there's no sort of obligation to retain trees at all costs. It's a consideration at all stages. It does mention prioritising retention of trees, but not so much retention first, I believe. There is built-in flexibility. It speaks of regulated trees, which is a term that that we have heard from city officers and executive leadership team, and it seems to be a term that we're all comfortable with. In our recent engagement sessions, there was an overwhelming majority of elected members that seemed to be supportive of regulation on private land of trees. So this is all consistent with what is in the Walga policy. So it's actually, in my own mind, quite recent that I've come to the realisation that we can come at this from two angles. We can come at it from the Walga established, the work that has already been done by Walga and adjust that for our own purposes, or we can essentially start from scratch ourselves and go through EMES processes, that sort of thing, to arrive at the sorts of things that are in here anyway. So I just think it would be a much more efficient process for us to, a more efficient path for us to go down to look at things from the Walga policy as a starting point, and adjust back to a level of regulation that we're happy with. Lastly, I'll say that there's some definitions in here about a regulated tree being 8 metres or more, having average canopy diameter of 6 metres, some other things there. These are things that we don't necessarily have to, they don't have to be our definitions of what is a regulated tree. But the framework here for the Walga policy and a lot of the provisions in it make a lot of sense, are very consistent with the sorts of things that we've talked about already, and therefore I think Councillor Wheatland's alternate motion is a good step in the right direction, a good way to move forward more quickly. I think the community has a perception that we've been dragging our feet when it comes to tree policy. It's important that we get this right with upcoming decisions to be made around LPS 6 and these sorts of things. I think the more we can do now, the better. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Green. Is there a speaker against? Councillor Barber.
I've got a question, Madam Mayor, if that's
question,
okay.
Councillor Barber.
Thank you. So my question is, and I wasn't at the most recent elected member engagement session, but the officer recommendation talks about preparing a draft local planning policy, and I'm wondering whether, and Councillor Green mentioned option 3, and I'm wondering if the city are already using Walga as a framework for the draft local planning policy.
Is there an officer who can answer that? Yes, Mr. Varellis, planning.
Through the chair, thank you for your question, Councillor Barber. The city isn't currently regulating trees on private land. We're awaiting the policy direction of council to provide the city clear direction in that regard. Notwithstanding some of the conversation this evening around utilising the Walga policy as a base, the city, in working with council on a policy development process, would certainly utilise aspects of the Walga model policy to inform that policy development process. And that's something that would definitely assist us in providing some guidance. Notwithstanding, I reflect on the various discussions at the elected member engagement sessions and the various views amongst council on this issue. By going through the WALGA process, it does define the guardrails more so than what the officer recommendation does, and just reflecting on the different views and opinions out of the elected member engagement sessions is all that I would remind council of.
Councillor Barber.
Just a follow-up question, if I may, Madam Mayor. On both of these recommendations, there's no date, and I just see that we desperately need a policy. Was anybody preparing to put a date on? Maybe the officers first?
Mr Varelis?
Through the chair, the intention was to workshop this through the elected member engagement sessions throughout Q1 of next year, Q1 calendar year, with the intention of having a draft policy presented by the end of Q2 next calendar year.
All right, I'd really love to see I might make an amendment later and see if we can get a date on there. Councillor Wheatland, were you thinking about having a date on yours?
Let's do the date later. Let's stick to the debate at the moment. So I'm looking for a speaker against. Oh, hang on. Councillor Spanbrook, I believe, had her hand up.
Yeah, thank you.
I can't see her have to rely on the officers, but she did put her hand up a little while ago. Councillor Spanbrook, are you speaking against?
I am. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Even though this motion does have there is some credibility to it. However, following our engagement session, that as the director has just mentioned, that there has been some different debate on it. However, as what is in the alternate motion officer recommendation, it does state that this alternate motion is actually is based specifically on the WALGA model local planning policy tree retention, and it does set a retention first objective as a primary outcome. However, with regard to the city officers, they would rather have the endorsement to commence a preparation of a draft local planning policy for trees on private land with a broad objective to encourage retention of mature trees while allowing reasonable development. I don't see this alternative motion as allowing for reasonable development, as the WALGA model is really quite prescriptive, and I think we do need to be considerate of the community, and especially with the infill, there is more and more development taking place. However, as the director also said, this is yet to be discussed in the first and a decision made by the second quarter of next year. And I think that we do need to have further discussion prior to actually be agreeing to a prescriptive alternate motion that is being put for us right now with regard to, I'll just repeat it again, being based specifically on the WALGA model local planning policy. Thank you. I'll leave it there. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Spanbrook, thank you. A speaker for? Can I just get an indication of, that's all right, speaker, is there any other speakers against? I just need an indication. Okay, thank you. A speaker for? Is a question, Councillor Hong.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to ask the officers, how feasible is it to raise the city's tree canopy target from 15 to 20%? Thank you.
Mr Varelis? No, Mr Coton? Thank you.
Through the chair, if I may, I'm comfortable.
Okay, Mr Varelis, I'll defer to you. I did see your microphone on. Thank you.
Thank you. Through the chair, thank you for your question, Councillor Hong. As part of the policy development process, we'll look into detail as to how that could occur. I don't have an answer for council this evening, but as mentioned, would work through that and look at what actions would need to be undertaken to achieve that target.
Okay, thank you. I'm looking for a speaker for.
Madam Mayor, may I just continue with that question that Councillor Hong did ask, because it's quite a relevant question, as it has been actually put to us at EMIS, and the Director Coton, he may have that answer, as we actually have received the tree canopy percentages from officers previously.
Okay, thank you. I will ask Mr Coton then. Mr Coton, do you think you have a response?
Through you, Madam Mayor, if all the areas in the public domain that have been identified as part of the urban canopy were planted, that would result in a coverage of 17%. So the current residential land at the time the study was undertaken, the canopy cover was 6.7%, and that's been predicted to drop down to 3.6%, but that's on the assumption that all the residential land is developed, that can be developed, is cleared. So it's a little bit of a pessimistic view as well, because there will also be some R25 lands that's recently been developed as examples where the new canopy hasn't fully formed. So I apologise, it's not an exact answer, but as Mr Varelis has pointed out, there's some further work could be undertaken on that.
Thank you. I'm still looking for a speaker for. Oh, Councillor Barber.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I'm happy to speak for because I take what Councillor Green said, and looking at Councillor Wheatland's motion, she does word it saying that to prepare a draft local planning policy based on the Walga model. So she's not asking us at this stage to adopt the Walga model. It's more based on the Walga model, and I'm all into efficiency. So I think from that perspective, it's not a bad place to start.
Thank you. Speaker against, Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In speaking against this motion, I'd like to refer to the officer's comments on this motion, and the officer recommendation avoids prescribing a model at this stage to ensure collaborative development through workshops, detailed consideration of provisions, thresholds, exemptions, approval pathways and compliance, and Council retains flexibility to determine the most appropriate approach once impacts are understood. The Walga model may be considered later, but mandating it now represents a more prescriptive and higher intervention direction. Adopting the alternate motion reduces flexibility and scope for elected members during workshops to influence the draft policy approach. It may also create perceptions that the outcome is predetermined. And I think that's really the problem we have, is that we've gone through a fairly detailed examination of things. I'm not sure how many people around here have read the draft or read the Walga policy. I must say that I've skimmed through it, but I do not know it in detail, and therefore would be making a decision based on something I do not really and fully examined. And I think that's the danger here, that without, everyone's referring to the draft or the Walga policy, but it hasn't actually been brought before this council to be examined closely to see whether it fits the particular circumstances of this locality. And the policy at the moment, that's the officer's recommendation on the policy, is taking us forward in a way that has been discussed, and if down the track it needs to be further revised, it can be. Nothing stops that from happening. But at the moment, we're being asked to make a decision that is quite focused and prescriptive and doesn't have the same level of consultation with the community. Now, we talk about the community having, a lot of support from the community. That's probably 1,000 people. The remaining 90,000 people in the city of Melville are the quiet majority who are, and some of them are out there cutting down their trees as we speak. And that's what Councillor Wheatland referred to. Trees are being cut down because of the possibility of this policy being introduced. And that's what we've got to avoid. If we, I know for a fact from feedback that I've been getting from people is that, well, we'll just cut the trees down, or we'll make sure we don't plant a tree that ever grows to those dimensions. So it's a policy that's actually going to limit the tree canopy we receive. If we do it by consultation, we do it by cooperation, we'll get much further down the track. And, just jumping in and making decisions on the run which are prescriptive are not really to the benefit of the community or to the city. So for that reason, I would say, let's stick with the policy as proposed by the officers. It's able to be amended, it can be changed, and then let them get out there and plant those 32,000 trees that they think they can plant without giving them any extra work to do at the moment. So I'm still on that same track as before. Let's make it positive step forward to planting trees rather than still sitting around and talking about doing things. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Do we have any further speakers against? Okay, look, if you are, hang on. Well, I'll take a speaker for then. Is there a speaker for? If not, I'll take one more speaker against, then we'll close the debate. Well, we often have, the last debate we had 2 for in a row to finish. So now we've got it a little bit the other way. So Councillor Lim, I'll take you and then we're closing the debate.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll be pretty brief. So I do understand and commend Councillor Wheatland for definitely basing the Wagga model. But after hearing from our Director of Planning, it sort of adds a bit more guardrails to what we're trying to draft up, because we were sort of talking about the Wagga policy. We could potentially be sort of less regulated if we're basing it on community consultation, but it could also swing the other way. It could be more regulated than what the Wagga policy suggests. So I think the officers definitely are aware of the Wagga model, and will, I think, based off our engagement sessions, we are already leaning very far towards the regulated opinion. So I think it would already heavily base off the Wagga model anyways. But yeah, I just want to remove any sort of guardrails, just so that there's more flexibility in the officers actually drafting a more sort of Melville, centric policy, as opposed to a more broader metropolitan policy like Wagga. Yeah, so that's sort of my reason for voting against. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lim. Councillor Wheatland, please wrap up the debate.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Look, I appreciate everyone's comments for and against, and I'm trying really hard to stay focused right now to stick to my rebuttal. I think in regards to saying that the Wagga model policy is solely focused on retention, I'd say that that is incorrect. The policy explicitly balances tree protection with reasonable development. It provides clear pathways in the objectives for removal where justified. It allows, this is in 3.0, the objectives, it allows redesign flexibility, supports offsets and replacement planning, and integrates with strategic planning and subdivision design. It's a planning tool. It's not a prohibition. It creates clarity for the officers, not restriction. The Wagga model policy is not a policy on the run. It's been informed by legal, technical, expert, industry and community consultation over a period of time. The reason why I wanted to put this alternate motion up is because when I saw the officer recommendation after our second EMES on this, I didn't think it covered what we spoke about in the EMES. It didn't reflect where the dots were. So I wanted to move this alternate motion to prepare a draft local planning policy for trees on private land based on the Wagga model local planning policy tree retention. Councillor Green said it perfectly. It is a basis. I am not saying to adopt it directly, but to prepare a draft local planning policy based on that. We can make it Melville-centric. In relation to, I probably should have read some of the points out that I wrote on the alternate recommendation, but they are in there. In relation to Councillor Ross's comments about not reading the WALGA or skimming the WALGA model policy, I find that really, really strange, because this motion mentions that I want the draft local planning policy based on the WALGA model local planning policy. So I would have hoped that everyone in this chamber had had a good read of that planning policy to understand the reasons why I'm wanting to move this. And again, point 4, request the draft policy be workshopped with elected members. So I urge you, and then we'll go into community feedback. You know, like, we've heard long and hard about community feedback. We've got residents still in the audience here. And I had a Facebook post I did on Friday. I had 30 comments. I had over 100 reactions to it. I think it was 2,500 engagements on that post. I understand that we've all got different parts of the community, different people want different things, but this is a balanced model local planning policy, and I ask you to consider to support this alternate recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wheatland. All right, we're going to be voting now on the alternative motion put by Councillor Wheatland. If you support it, this will become the motion and the officer's recommendation will fall away. If you do not support it, in other words, voting red, this alternate motion will fall away and the officer's recommendation will come on the table. Councillor Spanbrook, can you please give us your vote?
I'm against it. Thank you.
Thank you. That is lost 4-7. We are now reverting to the officer's recommendation.
Madam Mayor, I have an amendment, foreshadow an amendment on this one, please.
On which one?
On the substantive.
The officer's recommendation.
Correct.
It's not on the table yet, so we need a mover and seconder. Councillor Woodall, seconded. Councillor York. Okay, we need to open the debate first. You had an amendment or something, is it?
I foreshadowed an amendment. I've already sent it through to governance.
Thank you. We'll begin with the debate. Councillor Woodall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, this local planning policy, I think, was workshopped, and I do thank Councillor Wheatland for her motion bringing that matter to a debate, which I think was a good debate to have. There were a lot of views around the table with councillors. There are also a lot of views in the community, ranging from people who don't want any regulation of trees on private land to those who want to go the full way with the WALGA policy. I think what this officer recommendation proposes is somewhat of a middle ground. It still does involve regulation of trees on private land with the overarching objective of encouraging retention. However, it does allow reasonable development to proceed, and there was discussion about the level of planting that would have to take place to justify removal of mature trees. I think this still has a long way to go. We haven't seen what the actual details of the policy are yet, and that needs to be workshopped. I think there are definitely opportunities to incorporate elements of the WALGA policy, which we think are suitable for the City of Melville. But I also don't think we should be afraid to make our own decisions and to go it alone where we think it's appropriate. I also think this is a good compromise because, I think it's a difficult position to take where if we were to adopt something like the WALGA policy and fully 100% commit to retention of trees on private land, but then on the other hand, we're saying we're not going to put a tree on the city-owned verge out the front of your house because you don't want one. There's a bit of a logical inconsistency which I find quite difficult to bridge, and I think there are questions around why the city would attempt to completely restrict removal of trees on private land, but at the same time not actually planting a tree on its own verge. So I think this is a good compromise for the time being. I think we can work through it and we can see where that takes us, and there definitely is an opportunity to incorporate elements of the Walga policy if we think that they're suitable. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Woodall. Councillor York, do you wish to speak now or later?
Yes, speak now.
Thank you.
Yeah, look, to be fair, I didn't really see much practical difference between the officer's recommendation and the alternative motion. Given the wording, there were a lot of, I would say, escape clauses in it, and it still may be that we end up adopting and basing the policy on the WA Walga policy anyway. So, yeah, I don't want to add anything further.
Thank you, Councillor York. Is there a speaker against?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to move an amendment, please.
What is your amendment?
It's, I believe, I've sent it to the officers, and my amendment, I'll read it out, that do I need a seconder first?
Well, I think everybody would like to know what it is first and before seconding it.
That point 2 of the officer recommendation be deleted and replaced with request the CEO to prepare a draft local planning policy for trees on private land that requires approval for the removal of significant trees that meet defined criteria, that aims to retain significant trees where practical while supporting reasonable development through a clear and consistent assessment pathway, includes requirements for replacement planting or an appropriate contribution mechanism where removal is approved, provides clear exemptions for unsuitable, exempt or unsafe trees, establishes an evidence-based decision-making process appropriate to the nature of the request, and where appropriate incorporates clear guidance on what constitutes tree damaging activity to support consistent assessment, and that the draft policy be workshopped with elected members before being presented for consent to advertise. And I have discussed this with Director Varelis.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? That lapses through lack of a okay, you're seconding it? Councillor Barber. Okay, thank you. Yes, Councillor Wheatland, please proceed with your debate.
Thank you. Question.
Yes, what is your question?
Can I speak to it first?
Well, we have a question.
Okay.
My question is in relation to the rules about amendments, and I think some of this, what's being proposed here, is very similar to the previous motion from the same mover. It's got the same intent, significantly very close to what was moved before, and I understand that's not allowed under 11.11 of the local government meeting procedures.
I'll just consult with the head of governance.
While that consultation's going on, I did discuss this with the Director of Planning, and he had no issues with the amendment.
Councillor Ross, Mr Yildiz has a question for you.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Just to clarify, is your query in relation to the amendment now that is substantially the same as the alternative motion that was lost, or is your query in relation to that this amendment is substantially not dissimilar to the current officer recommendation? Okay. If I may provide some advice in relation to that, I do note that the current amendment Councillor Wheatland's seeking to move is most probably spells out criteria that's not dissimilar to the officer recommendation. It doesn't reference the Walga tree policy, notwithstanding that some of the elements are most probably across both. So I would suggest that whilst this particular amendment does provide clear guidance on what the policies to be included, it doesn't differentiate too substantively from the officer recommendation, which also has some elements of the Walga policy. So I would suggest that it most probably is still okay for consideration by council on that basis.
All right, thank you. Councillor Wheatland.
Thank you. And look, I'd like to refer to this amendment as Amendment 3.5. And my reasons for this amendment, I'll just speak to them briefly because we've had a big discussion around this clarity. And part of the reasons why I wanted to add this to the officer recommendation, again, because I felt that the officer recommendation was too broad. It didn't actually, not that we want to go into detail because we're not moving motions that provide detail, but I just wanted to provide some clarity for the community around what we would like to see within this, and it reflected also what we discussed at the EMES, which I was surprised to see that that option was not the option that we have in this recommendation. So I wanted to provide a clear and consistent framework for assessing proposed removal of significant trees on private land to ensure significant trees are retained wherever practical due to their environmental, amenity and community value, to balance tree retention with reasonable development expectations through a transparent and predictable assessment pathway, to introduce a fair, proportionate, evidence-based approach to decision-making without imposing unnecessary burden on applicants, to introduce replacement planting or contribution mechanisms that help maintain or improve the city's overall tree canopy, to provide clear exemptions for unsuitable, exempt or unsafe trees, ensuring the policy remains practical, equitable and risk responsive, to support the city's broader climate and urban forest objectives, particularly in areas with declining canopy and strong community concern, to reduce ad hoc decision-making and improve transparency and certainty for residents, applicants and the broader community, to ensure elected members can meaningfully shape the draft policy through a workshop prior to public advertising. And the workshop will be the third workshop, the third. To deliver a policy approach that is fit for purpose for the City of Melville, reflective of contemporary best practice and aligned with community expectations. And lastly, to allow for explicit future clarification of what constitutes tree damaging activity, improving consistency, compliance and legal robustness. Please consider this amendment and your support for this amendment would be greatly received, I think, too, by the community. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wheatland. Councillor Barber, do you wish to speak now or later?
I'll reserve my right. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Spanbrook, are you speaking for or against, or do you have a question?
Madam Mayor, I do have a question because part of the amendment, actually I would like to speak against it as well, and the part of the actual amendment, it does state the first point requires approval for the removal of significant trees that meet defined criteria. There has been no criteria defined, nor have we had discussion for this. So this motion in particular is actually jumping the gun. It's actually catering for a small amount of number within the community. I don't think that it has been, put to the community in its entirety. Has been already spoken how, you know, the 90% of the community probably would not agree with this. And I think that there is no need to have this amendment when you consider that the officer recommendation is more than adequate. And so I'll just leave it there. Thank you. And the fact is there is no criteria. So having an amendment that meets the defined criteria is quite definitive. So I just don't think that's appropriate. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Spanbrook. A speaker for? Okay.
Would you like me to
take
speak
one more
now,
again?
Madam Mayor?
Oh,
Or
you
or
can
do
speak
two
now
in a
if you
row.
wish.
No, that's good. No, do another one.
Do you wish to speak now? You can. A second, you can speak any time you like. Okay, if there's no speaker for, I'll go for another speaker against. Councillor Woodall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I think this is an attempt to try and set out in more detail what is to go into the draft local planning policy. I don't support it, and the main reason for that is I think it's putting the cart before the horse a bit. We still have a lot of work to do on developing the local planning policy. And we've only had initial discussions amongst elected members. There's a very broad range of views. And I think getting into the level of detail that's in this amendment before we've actually workshopped these issues, I don't think they've been discussed in enough depth yet for us to have the local planning policy drafted incorporating those things. So what's in the officer recommendation, I believe there was general consensus on, was an overarching objective of encouraging the retention of mature trees, noting that that was a compromise because there were a range of different views. But this amendment talks about retaining significant trees wherever practical. Now, I think that's quite a significant difference to an overarching objective of encouraging the retention of mature trees. Now, I'm not necessarily against it. I think it has merit, but I think we need to have a discussion amongst all the councillors and further consider if we want to go down that path and if there's general consensus before we ask the officers to draft a policy with that wording. So for that reason, I'd rather that we'd rather go with the officer recommendation without this amendment. We workshop these issues further, which I'm sure the dot points Councillor Wheatland has included will be discussed in any event in the course of the workshops. But that really then will allow council to come to some kind of consensus on what council would like to see in the policy. And I think that'll be a better way to deal with this rather than try and specify, with this level of detail at a council meeting what we want in the policy. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Woodall. Councillor Barber, do you wish to speak now?
Yeah, I'll just speak briefly, Madam Mayor. Look, I think Councillor Wheatland has outlined in detail, I agree, but there's some positive elements to discuss as part of a draft local planning policy for trees on private land. It does give both the elected members and city officers guidance as to what we might include in that draft policy. And I'd also like to add some incentives, but hopefully all of those sorts of things are discussed in the local planning policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barber. Councillor Wheatland, can you close up the debate?
Yeah, thank you. And look, I will thank you everyone for your input into this. I just want to cover off one thing that Councillor Woodall talked about consensus. I don't know if any of you remember, we had a workshop on the 25th of November. Not everyone was there, and it was about trees on private land. We had a detailed workshop where we sat around on tables and we discussed different options, and we had a presentation from the Director of Urban Planning. And did anyone else? We had a detailed discussion, and then at the end of the day, at the end of the evening, we had the option to put a green dot on one of 4 options. Does everyone remember that? And the consensus on that night was the majority went towards one option. Now, I can't mention that option because it was a confidential meeting, but do you remember that? The consensus was...
Yeah,
hang on,
you can
I am
continue with
wrapping
your
up,
debate.
thank you. Yeah, I'm not speaking about what it was. So there was consensus, so I debunked that. And the fact that we're going back...
Point of order, Madam Mayor.
What is your point of order?
I never said there wasn't consensus. I think the officer, my point was that the officer recommendation reflects that consensus.
Okay, I'll take that back. And that's the other reason why I want to move this amendment, because this offer of recommendation did not reflect what the consensus was on that EMES. So I ask you all to support my amendment, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wheatland. We are now going to the vote. So we are voting on the amendment that Councillor Wheatland has put forward. If you vote green, you are supporting her amendment. If you vote red, you are not supporting it, and it is removed, and we go back to the officer's recommendation as moved and seconded. Councillor Spanbrook, are you for or against?
I'm against, Madam Mayor.
Against, thank you. The amendment is lost to 9. We're going back to the substantive motion as moved and seconded by Councillor Woodall and Councillor York. All right, is there a speaker against? If there's no speaker against, and we can go to a vote, yes, thank you. If there's no further speakers, does Councillor Woodall wish to wrap up the debate? No. Okay, let's go to the vote. We're on the substantive motion, the officer's recommendation. If you support the officer's recommendation, please vote green. If you do not, vote red. Councillor Spanbrook, do you support the officer's recommendation or not?
Yes, I do.
Yes, you do.
I
Okay,
support
thank you.
it.
Thank you. It's carried unanimously. Now we're going back to where we left off to attend to this item. So it's CD 2556, adoption of new council policy CP 132 or community awards. Page 16. Can I have a mover for the officer recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Robbins. Is there a seconder? Councillor Barber. Is there anyone against? If there is no one against, I declare it carried. M2561, proposed 2026 council meeting schedule. Can I have a mover and seconder of the officer's recommendation? Councillor Robbins, seconded. Councillor Barber. Is there anyone opposed? If there is no one opposed, I declare it carried. Moving on to the next item, which is C25345, Corporate and Community Climate Action Plans Annual Report 2024 to 2025. Can I have a mover and seconder, please? Can I have a mover and seconder, please? Councillor Green, seconded. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Lim. Is there anyone against? If there's no one against, I declare it carried. Moving on to item C25348, statements of financial activity for October. This needs an absolute majority. Can I have a mover and seconder, please? Councillor Lim, seconded Councillor York. Thank you very much. Is there any voice against? Is there any speaker against? If there's no speaker against, I declare it carried. Moving on to item CD 2553, implementing menstrual equity initiatives in the City of Melville. The council is advised that an alternative motion has been submitted by Councillor Spanbrook. However, as this is received without notice, the officer recommendation will be considered first. Can I have a mover and seconder for the officer recommendation? Are there any movers and seconders for the officer recommendation? Okay. Councillor Whitland, seconded. We need a seconder. Councillor Barber, thank you. Now, I'm going to ask, is there anyone opposed? I would imagine Councillor yes, there are some opposed, so we will go to debate. Councillor Whitland, can you please begin with the debate, open the debate?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, this is up for decision tonight due to a motion that I brought to council, I can't remember when it was, before August, I think, and it's about investigating ways to create equity and access to period products and menstruation products for women and girls across the city of Melville. I note the officer recommendation. Just bear with me, I've got to find it in my thing. Sorry, I had to go to the bathroom. And the officer recommendation has come up with some really innovative ways to accommodate or to address ways that we can increase access to period products and help create equity amongst women. And I think increasing the city's existing rebate for sustainable menstrual products by $1,500 is more than reasonable when we consider the amount of money that we spend on compostable FOGO liners and also on compostable dog bags. The budget in 25-26 saw us spend $340,000 on compostable FOGO bags, which we give out to all our residents, which is a wonderful initiative. And the City of Melville, I don't think many other local governments do that. But with the poo bags, compostable dog bags, nearly $200,000 on compostable dog bags. In 2019, the city was purchasing approximately 240,000 rolls annually. So to think an increase of $1,500 to increase the rebate for sustainable menstrual products is you know, it's really a drop in the ocean. But it's a good start. It's a very good start. And I really like the promoting a collection with a donation basket program. In the shared and participation in the shared the Dignity Council Cares program. Look, the officers have investigated all the options available to them, and I think this is a really good start. I did mention previously at an EMES that after this motion I contacted the Share the Dignity campaign and I've had no response. So I was a little bit disappointed in that. I think equity and access to menstrual products is critical and it's very important. And to think that some women go without their menstrual products so they can put petrol in their car. They use things like tissues or socks or other things to accommodate their monthly menstrual cycle. So I think this is a really good start. I commend the officers and the work that they've done in addressing this because I know that there was some opposition and I do hope that other elected members around this table can support the officer recommendation as it stands and, support this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wheatland. Councillor Barber, do you wish to speak now or later?
No, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Later, is that later?
Yeah, possibly, but probably not.
Thank you. Okay, I'm looking for a speaker against. Is that you, Councillor Spanbrook?
Madam Mayor, I don't wish to speak against it. I just would rather go straight to the vote if we can, and hopefully this won't actually get supported, and we'll go then to my alternative motion, which I think is much more sensible. And,
okay, I think you're kind of debating your motion, so we can't really take that. I'm going to have to take a speaker against. Thank you, Councillor Spanbrook.
Against.
Councillor York.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Look, yeah, in my view, this is a state or federal issue. I don't think it's the role falls within the remit of local government and our basic traditional functions. I don't think our role is to create equity. I'm not really in favour of any rebates at local government level, particularly one that's not means tested. And I worry when people say words like it's a good start. I mean, where do things like this end? You know, there's it's a good cause, but there's a lot of good causes out there, and I just don't think we should be picking and choosing things. You know, do we start subsidising toilet paper for people? I mean, yeah, nothing further to add.
Thank you. Councillor York, Speaker 4. I'll take one more Councillor Barber.
Yep, I'll just speak now. I thought Councillor Wheatland's facts about the dog bags at 200,000 a year and the FOGO bags at 340k a year were significant. I'm trying to think if condoms are free. I'm not sure about that. Okay, Councillor Wheatland said they're free, so it probably is not a bad thing that we give some money. Something that I am a little bit worried about that the Councillor Wheatland mentioned was that Spare the Dignity didn't get back to you, and preempting what potentially could be Councillor Spanbrook's alternate motion, that might be interesting to hear. So I'll just leave it at that. Thanks.
All right, I'll take one more speaker against.
Madam Mayor, I have my hand up.
Yeah, no, Councillor, but you were speaking about your alternate motion.
Yes,
Are you actually
and then I
speaking
was
against
going
this?
Yes, I am speaking against it.
Thank you.
If I get an opportunity, I will.
Well, I'm waiting for you to speak against it.
Okay, well, thank you. That yes, I do. I would like to speak against this, and I think that the initial resolution of council, I'm not confident that it actually anticipated the officers to go to such great lengths of what they have done. And with the Share the Dignity, that it is actually an organisation that is much bigger than the City of Melville and the partners that they do partner with. And I don't think that with 110,000 people within the City of Melville would all entirely support this, especially aligning with Share the Dignity. As then where does it end? I mean, there are many other charitable organisations that we could then align with. It needs to stop somewhere, and we need to also consider that we need to be equitable, and especially we have the fact that we have a fiduciary duty to ensure that public funds are allocated to projects that deliver broad and equitable benefits to the entire community. However, in saying that, I do take umbrage to Councillor Wheatland's her comparison with poop bags, as poop bags are more equitable than actually even aligning with Share the Dignity. So I'll leave it there, and hopefully this does not get supported. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spanbrook. I'll now go back to Councillor Wheatland to wrap up the debate.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, this is always a colourful debate, this topic, and again, people aren't comfortable talking about menstruation or women's periods, but I just want to cover off a couple of points that Councillor York mentioned. I was going to call you Councillor Crawford then. Councillor York mentioned that we don't give out toilet paper. Well, we do, because they're in all our toilets.
I said we don't rebate or subsidise private toilet paper purchases.
Anyway, we have toilet paper in all of our toilets. We have hand wash in all of our toilets. It's basic health and hygiene. If we don't have, anyway, it is not a local government responsibility. I get that. It is not a state or a federal responsibility. It is a responsibility of us as human beings to support each other. And I'm not saying $3,000 on a rebate is chips. Seriously, $3,000. I'd happily donate my sitting fee for that once a year to make this happen. also, the second part of this recommendation is to ask the community to donate to a program. How is that going to impact residents and ratepayers across the City of Melville? I have no idea. So you can come up with whatever excuse you want to not support this motion. $3,000? If this doesn't get supported, Madam CEO, can you put on your radar, I will donate 1 month sitting fee to make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wheatland. We'll go to
Madam
the
Mayor,
vote.
can I just ask a question? Why is it that Councillor Spanbrook wasn't allowed to speak about her alternate motion? Because surely we need to know what the alternative is.
But you know what it is. It's been advertised.
Yeah, but I don't think, surely it's appropriate for it to be allowed to be discussed in debate, because we know that if this
Councillor
loses, we're going
Robbins, when the alternative motion gets up, she can speak to it. But we're not speaking about the alternate motion, we're speaking about this motion.
But it's motion on the same item. It's not like it's two separate items. They're related. Okay,
Can we just go to the vote? Thank you. Okay, we're voting on this item. As you understand, it's been highlighted that we have an alternative motion if this fails. So vote red, and
Madam,
this
no, it's
will.
too late now.
If this vote for green, and you are voting for this recommendation, the officer recommendation. Vote red if you're against it. Councillor Spanbrook, could you please give us your vote?
I'm voting against it. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I cast my vote in favour of the officer's recommendation. The final vote is 6-5 in favour of the officer's recommendation. All right, moving on to the next item. CD 2554, Community Security Brentwood Petition Response. Can I have a mover and seconder, please? Perhaps the ward councillors might like to support it. Councillor Lim moved and seconded Councillor Ross. Is there anyone against? If there's no voice against, I declare it carried. E2583, response to notice of motion Applecross Ferry Terminal. Can I please have a mover and seconder? Councillor Ross, seconded. Oh, sorry, this one's already been carried on block. Yes, let's move on. Item UP 2593, we've already done that one. Moving on to UP 2575, LPS 6, Review, Staging and Implementation Plan. Can I have a mover and seconder, please? Councillor Woodall moved and Councillor Robbins second. Is there anyone against? If there is no one against, I declare it carried. UP 2592, Response to Petitions, Local Planning Scheme 6 Review. Can I have a mover and seconder, please? Councillor Robbins, seconded Councillor Green. Is anyone against? If no one is against, I declare it carried. We now have motions with previous notice. Item 15, there are no motions with previous notice for this evening. Item 16, motions without previous notice. There are no motions without previous notice for this evening. Item 17, matters behind closed doors. Now we have to move on to a confidential item for this evening. I need a mover and seconder to go behind closed doors. Can I have a mover and seconder? Councillor Green, seconded Councillor York. Is there anyone against? If there's no one against, I declare it carried. Thank you. We're now going behind closed doors. Thank you. We are going to turn off the live streaming and close the door. Okay, item 18. Decisions made while meeting was closed to the public. For the purposes of the minutes, item C 25352 RFP outcomes 410 Canning Highway, Attadale was discussed behind closed doors and the officer recommendation was carried. 19, closure. This brings us to the closure of the last ordinary meeting of Council for 2025, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank elected members, the CEO and staff for their efforts throughout the year, and to wish all of you, your families and community a safe and happy, festive, prosperous new year, prosperous period and a very wonderful new year. So please all take the time to rest and recharge, and I look forward to working with you all in 2026 as we collectively work together towards our goal of achieving an inclusive, vibrant and sustainable future for our community. Does the Deputy Mayor wish to make some comments?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just on behalf of the Council and all the elected members and also the staff of the City, just thank you for your leadership over the past year and your commitment to the role. We all greatly appreciate it, and we would like to wish you and your family a very Merry Christmas and a safe and happy New Year as well. And we look forward to working with you in 2026.
Thank you very much, Councillor Woodall. So now for the purposes of the minutes, can the following councillors please confirm they're still in attendance? Councillor Spanbrook.
I am here. So for the last meeting of 2025, I hope everyone had a great council meeting, and I wish I was there to have a drink with you, but otherwise I will be there next week. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Spanbrook. Good evening to you, and thank you very much for your attendance, everybody, and Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Thank you. I now declare the meeting closed at 9:14 p.m. Thank you for your attendance.